Hey, hello, John here, and we are not back in Library of Ruina. Instead, we are going to actually make some content that isn't just playing the actual game, and that is making a tier list of the ego pages the game has up to this point. The only flaw that we haven't realized yet is Kitty, and it doesn't even have a realization in game, so yeah, these are all of the pages available to us at this point. And we're going to rank them. I'm going to rank them on the ease of use, viability and strengths. So if a page is very strong but it is very costly to use, maybe it wouldn't rank as high as something that costs like 3 but is a bit lower in quality of strengths. And with that we'll start off with Apocalypse here, that is actually a very strong page. It is a Mystic page that has, I believe, a 20-25 roll on summation, which doesn't seem to be very strong, but it has a +8 power if the librarian that uses it has 50% or less health, and it does deal 1.5 times the damage to all the enemies that have 50% or less health. So it is basically the best abnormality page you could ever, ego page that you could ever even take on a tier 3 ego page choice, because it is very strong, and by the time you would probably have most of the librarians at lower than 50% HP as well as enemies. So that is easily Object Art. Now Big isn't as strong in my opinion. It only has 2 7 to 10 pierce dice, which aren't that great for its cost of 4, I believe. But it does lower the cost of 2 pages in your hand by 1, but only until you use them. If it lowers the costs for the entire reception, yeah, it would be very strong. But also by overusing it a lot, you could make it too strong, so it wouldn't be even balanced. But with how it is now, I'd probably put it in either hardcover or paperback. Really don't think it deserves paperback, probably low hardcover. Dream of Black Swan, an actually really good Mystic page that takes light from enemies and inflicts a lot of debuffs, as far as I remember, and it seems to be one of the strongest abnormality pages on Hot's floor. So probably you would pick this over many of other ego pages on Hot's floor, so let's just give it a limited tier for now. Blend Rage, Burnt. It hits your own allies and it is incredibly strong, but it will kill your team before it kills the enemies. Cobalt Scar. It has a very interesting mechanic of dealing damage only once instead of its attacks, and I don't know how is it really supposed to be used. I guess it doesn't deal any staggered damage because it only does damage equal to the sum of all valid rolls, so it doesn't do any staggered damage. And real staggered damage is a type of damage you want to be dealing to the enemies, because when they're staggered, they're much easier to target, so losing out on that is not too great for us. But it does still have pretty strong dice, and the first one recycles I think up to 4 times, so it definitely deserves a high hardcover tier. Now, Crimson Scar is a bit different. It is a synchronization ego page, and it isn't too great in my opinion, because Little Red's pages are pretty weak, especially for the time when you get the ego page. So if you were frustrated with Little Red's fight during the abnormality suppression, you will be frustrated with this ego page, because your pages will be as weak as her were. So let's just give it a high burn tier. Now the Couple is an interesting page, as it kind of has the same abilities as Dream of Black Swan, but also I haven't used it. And it seems to be probably as strong as Dream of Black Swan, maybe a bit weaker. So I guess I'll give it a limited tier for now. It seems to be very close to that, but a bit weaker. Silence gives you a speed die, and I think I've made my point clear when I first got Silence. That one speed die is very difficult to sustain. you either use a very weak page that restores light or draws pages on that one die, or you don't use anything, so that one die is probably worse than having no die at all. Not always, of course, on singleton builds you'll have all the sustainability in the world to use with the most amount of dice, so really having more dice is pretty great there, but also you're probably not even running a singleton at this point of the game. So I'll give that a paperback, probably a high paperback tier. Ozma's attack, I think is called Oblivion, is kind of the exact opposite of Silence, because it gives you sustainability. It gives you 2 pages if it hits, I think, or maybe it gives you 2 pages on use, but it gives it to all of your allies, meaning that you can actually sustain your team with this one ego page. Not really with this one only ego page, but if you have a deck that is low on page draw, Oblivion can help a lot, so I'll give that a hardcover tier just above Big, but probably below Cobalt Scar. Now, this. I don't know what to say about Faint Aroma, I think it's... what's it called? Because it deals additional damage to staggered enemies, and I don't know how it is useful. And really, I haven't used ego pages much on Magic's floor, and if it has pierced dice, it's probably like hardcover. If it doesn't, it's paperback or even burned. Wouldn't give it burned though, because it doesn't kill your team and make you inherently worse at clashing with the enemies as it used to do, so probably low paperback for now. False Throne. The page with the highest cost in the entire game, as far as I know. It costs 7 light, as far as I remember, of course, and it restores your dead allies from the grave, but only for 1 turn. The page itself is pretty weak. It is a 2-attack mass tech page, but the abilities that it has, and that is to revive your allies, is pretty nice. I wouldn't actually use it over other HZs, abnormality pages like Oblivion for example, but it does seem to have its uses, so I'll give it high paperback. Probably lower than Silence. Give me that. Okay. Fourth Mage Flame. Fourth Mage Flame is a pretty interesting page. It is probably the first Mystic page you'll ever encounter, and it is very strong. A summation Mystic page that inflicts burn and hit on Melka's floor is just great. In my opinion, it is very useful on Philip's Ensemble fight and Philip's actual Crane Children fight, so you would get a lot of usage from Fourth Mage Flame. Probably would give it the same tier as these 2 strong Mystic pages in Limited, but I would put it at the highest possibility of Limited. Now we are back to Mystic pages again, and this is... oh, I actually don't remember what's it called. But I do remember that this is a very strong page that inflicts stagger damage on hit. Basically a much better version of Faint Aroma. Well, not really much better version, but it also plays around staggering enemies. But it actually helps staggering them instead of getting mileage of them getting staggered. So I would put it higher than Faint Aroma and probably in the high hardcover tier, maybe even low limited. Probably low limited, yeah. Okay. I don't know what to say about this. You can get 5 strength as far as I know, is if everything hits with this page. But it has a 5 to 15 individual roll, and it's pretty strong, but also many enemies in Southern City row 3 and Impurity have higher rolls than that. So I would put it in high hardcover tier, probably under Cobalt Scar. It is great for light restoration and light region, light restoration and strange gain, but outside of that, there is a much better Mystic page on this floor. And we're back to Melka's floor here with this one. I forget their names a lot, but this page is also a Mystic page that has 3 piercing individual dice, and I find it pretty useful. Oh, it's called Green Stem, of course. It is pretty nice in damaging enemies, but it doesn't have many additional abilities, so the lack of abilities would probably put it just over big and hard cover tier for me. Grinder. Probably a second object dot page. As I've seen that you can stack Grinder with purple tier and overthrow and snake slit on all those pages that buff slash dice to deal incredible amounts of damage to your enemies. It also inflicts bleed, so if any enemy is not staggered, they will probably bleed themselves out on the next scene. So that's definitely object dot, probably even over Apocalypse. Harmony. Harmony is a pretty interesting attack that can roll 5 dice at once. I would probably put it at paperback here, at high paperback, or even low hardcover. It doesn't seem to be very strong, but on Yesod's floor, very early in the game, you can actually get some mileage out of it, even though there are better pages on Yesod's floor, like, for example, Grinder. Probably would put it here in low hardcover. Harvest. Harvest is an interesting page because there aren't many ranged pages in the Ego Pages department, so Harvest is pretty strong for that, and also gains power for the amount of other brilliance present in the fight. It's very nice when stacked with Courage, so you can deal a lot of slashing damage to the enemy. And it is, as always with ranged attack pages, a great way to stagger opponents that alone stagger resistance, so that's definitely a high hardcover or even low limited. Heaven. Heaven is basically a better version of Silence when played in 1v1s, and overall it is a pretty useful page. Unlike Silence that gives the brilliance that uses a die, it actually breaks a die of the target, and it is also a ranged attack page just like Harvest. So you can easily just break dice of your enemies and stagger them, so it is very useful in fights. We'll probably put it just above Harvest or even above that stack page. Hornet. Hornet is also from Melgoth's floor, so it is one of the first Ego pages that you will encounter. It is a pretty strong piercing die, but the piercing die is only one here, and it isn't a ranged attack as far as I remember, or maybe it is. Anyway, it does have pretty high rolls, and it is very nice for collection if for staggering enemies if it is a ranged page. So I would put it probably under Harvest, as it doesn't have any other abilities like Harvest with its strength stacking and Heaven with its die breaking, so yeah, it is a bit weaker than those pages, but it can be acquired very early in the game. Now for In the Name of Love and Hate, or just Hate, I don't exactly remember the name. It is a better mystic page than Road to the King, I guess that's what it's called, and can deal a lot of damage to enemies. The sad thing is that it's a summation page, and it doesn't have that high of a dice roll. I would put it at high hardcover. It doesn't exactly get to the power that limited pages have, but it probably outshines all of the pages in hardcover tier. Justicia, that's an easy S tier, easy object dot tier rather, and probably would put it, I don't know if I would put it under Grinder or over Grinder, probably under Grinder, but Justicia is great on bosses. It can deal a lot of damage, up to 50 damage, 62 if we value in the lowest possible roll of the page, so it does have great damage output, so if your enemy is about to get beaten to death, you can probably just kill them with Justicia. And now for Letitia's page. I've actually never encountered this page in my play, so this is probably the only page that I haven't even used. So if there was a tier that had pages that I don't know anything about, I'll probably put it there. For now I'll put it in Burnt, just because I don't know much about the page. So if you have any objections and you would think that Letitia's page actually deserves object dot tier or anything else, please comment that. Lamp, another Venus page. And as you can see, both of the Venus page, nope, not both, we have seen on hardcover, but two of them are object dials, so Venus pages are pretty nice. And Lamp is one of them, as it is a Mistake page that on hit, or even on use, nullifies all strange bonuses your enemy has. It also nullifies all of the strength debuffs, so you have to be careful with that. But it can be a very interesting way to cheese Xiao and really any other enemy that has strength taken, so that's easily object dot. Not as strong as these ones though, because it doesn't have any real damage output, it only nullifies power. Lumber. Lumber is probably the best page out of the Ego pages for clashing because it has 4 dice and they are very strong. Winning clashes with the 3 of the first dice, you can buff up the last one, so it would roll incredible amounts of damage, so it's definitely very nice for clashing and killing people. Would probably put it on high limited tier, probably just under Force Mage Flame. Now, Bolt. This is another synchronization Ego page, and it is the first one you would ever acquire. The synchronization itself has pretty nice Mistake pages and overall nice ranged pages. I don't know how I overlooked it when I first got it, but now when fighting ensemble members it is very useful against Heal-In, and I would probably put it somewhere in the limited tier, probably just under Lumber. Mimicry, another object dot tier for sure, probably just under Justicia, maybe even better than Justicia, maybe even better than Grinder. This page can actually heal you a lot of HP, because it has unique ability to recover HP not by the dice roll, but by the amount of damage you've dealt. That means that strength stacking will give you even more healing, and if you attack staggered enemy, you're probably at full HP by now. So Mimicry is definitely very strong, and it is also a weaker version of Great Split Vertical for all of your other librarians on Gibor's floor. Void, another page that I haven't even used that much. As far as I remember, if you use it with a librarian who has a hand with no pages left, you would inflict a lot of debuffs on your enemies. And that is pretty useful, the debuff part. But it would be very difficult to get a fully empty deck, and of course it would be very difficult to play with that empty deck. I mean empty hand. So haven't used it that much, once again, so if it does have the ability to inflict debuffs on enemies when you've just used all of your pages this scene, that would be great. If it doesn't work like that, well, then I don't think it is of any use. But in best case scenario, it is probably in the limited tier, low limited tier, or maybe even high hardcover. I'll actually put it under hate because it does require some shenanigans to be pulled off before it can be of any use. Our Galaxy, a very interesting page, probably one of the only Ego pages I've used on Magic floor. It is nice for regaining health, and it also deals quite a lot of damage. So it'll probably go into the limited tier with all the Mistake pages, just over the other Nexus page. Here it is, the best synchronization in the game. Easily. The Ego page of White Knight is incredibly strong, and just the sheer ability to not care about any of your librarians except one also helps me a lot, because I really don't like thinking when a fight goes over like 14 scenes long. So using this Ego page can actually also buff all of your allies, because if you use this page once on any librarian, and then you give this librarian one of the tier 3 pages on Hawkman's floor, you can actually buff that page's ability, and it would be pretty strong with the ability too. Penitence is also another object dot page, probably just over Lamp. it recovers HP and stagger resistance of all allies, and doesn't deal too much damage to the enemies, but the first party should have sold you on the fact that it is very strong. Pleasure deals additional damage by the amount of emotion level, I think. Not too strong, probably would put it in paperback just under 4th round. It doesn't seem to be that incredible, but it also doesn't seem to be harmful to the team, so it's just not bad. Red Ice is actually incredible on the Greta fight on Hot's Floor, and outside of that, it's also pretty useful to just inflict a lot of debuffs on the enemy. Would put it in hard karma, I guess, just over Nihil. Regret, that's also a object dot page, of course. Deals 70 stagger damage, 70% of the stagger damage the enemy had previously, if all attacks connect. So basically uses as a one-sided attack and gets 70% of stagger resistance of the enemy of incredible strengths. I personally think that it is the best ego page on Yesod's floor. If we look at the ease of use, Mud Grinder also exists, and if you pull some tricks with it, you can deal incredible amounts of damage. Sanguine Desire. Yeah. Blitz taken on Hot's floor. That's easy. Smile. Smile is actually a pretty nice page, and all of the Giburos pages are pretty nice. And Smile actually is an individual one-die mistake page, meaning that it can only eat the first die of the enemy's page, but it inflicts a lot of feeble and disarm on the enemy, which is very useful. Probably does it on the scene that is used, so that actually makes it even more useful. Smile would go somewhere probably above the synchronization page. Edit is a pretty strong mistake page, but also can inflict a lot of debuffs. Soul Lament, I really want to put it here for the meme, but I also don't truly think that Soul Lament is as strong as White Knight's Eagle or Mimicry or Sanguine Desire or really anything above Justicia, so I would put it just over Apocalypse. Soul Lament deals a lot of damage and stagger damage, and when used as a one-sided attack, can easily stagger your opponent in one attack. It has a 1 to 8 or 1 to 6 ranged blunt die that rerolls 8 times. While it doesn't seem to be very strong, every roll has an on-hit effect that would deal 3 damage or stagger damage randomly to the target, meaning that you can stack up a lot of damage or stagger damage if you're lucky enough. Now Sound of a Star. It's great. It's like Apocalypse, but really not. Would probably put it over Apocalypse because it requires your Librarian stagger resistance to be over 50%, then it would deal additional 10 damage and stagger damage to all enemies. That means that you can easily pick off enemies' weaker pages and just do a lot of damage and stagger damage to them, meaning that you can easily stagger with this Mistake page, and it is probably the best Mistake page for staggering enemies. The Forgotten. I want to put it in Object Dart, but I also don't want to make Object Dart too crowded, so I put it in Limited, in High Limited tier. It destroys all dice on target's page and also can destroy all counter dice if used as a one-sided attack, meaning that all the boss's counter dice, if you're facing a boss, will be gone in an instant as soon as this hits. And that's great because many bosses utilize a lot of counter dice to fight against the amount of dice you have, so just breaking them at once with Forgotten will be very useful. The Homing Instinct. I really don't like this page. It is not that strong, but it recovers light to your entire team. But I think on Chiz's floor, you can easily go for Oblivion or Harvest or Lumber. So the Homing Instinct is just not as great as them, it pales in comparison, so I put it in paperback just over Faint Aroma. Maybe even over Pleasure, because it isn't that weak of a page, it restores light to the entirety of your team if it connects at least once, and it is pretty easy to make a Mystic page connect once if you're facing off against a lot of enemies. But outside of that, it really just pales in comparison to everything else that has to offer. Search Up and with Tears. Never actually use this page, but it does damage equal to a certain percent of the enemy's HP, meaning that it's limited for sure. Would probably put it over Hornet, but I think just using all the other pages here would be my strongest illusion Swords Up and Sharpened with Tears. Thirst. Yeah, it's finally time to get Object Dart crowded. Because Thirst can give you 5 strength if everything connects, and restores a lot of HP. No, it gives strength to the enemies. Okay, so it just restores a lot of HP. Still, it has a very nice high summation roll, and for Gibura's floor, really Mystic pages are the way to go. Unless you're going for Mimicry, then Mimicry is probably the better choice. I would put Thirst just under Penitence. It is probably better than Lamp and Regret on its own, but when used in conjunction with Gibura's Great Split Horizontal and Smile, it can easily stagger the entire team of the enemies, so it will be bumped up to like here, but that requires something to be pulled off, so it doesn't fare well on the ease of use scale. Today's expression, a very weird ego page. I actually haven't used it all yet, but I know exactly how it works. It has an incredibly strong block die that is supposed to stagger the enemy on if it wins the clash. And then the die after it will do a lot of damage because it does 10 additional damage if the enemy is staggered, meaning that you can easily just get rid of an enemy who is low at stagger resistance with this page, and that grants it a low hardcover tier, just under big. Twilight is actually not that great of a page. It is a Mystic page on Venus floor, and Venus floor pages are pretty nice, but I truly think that Twilight is the weakest of the Venus floor pages, as it doesn't have that great of rolls. It inflicts paralysis on the entire team, sure, but you can also just kill them with Apocalypse, so yeah. That's definitely a paperback, probably the highest paperback yet, but definitely a paperback. And we are back to actually good ego pages. Our last page is... Oh, can I really forget the name of the last ego page? I'm pretty sure it's Hunger. So this page does incredible amounts of damage and recovers a lot of HP to the user, which is great. In my opinion, everything that recovers HP is always great in Library of Ruina, so having it will never lose you anything. And it is on Malchus floor, meaning that you can get it pretty early in the game and get a lot of usage from it. So that would put it on Limited, right with all of the other Malchus floor pages, just under them because it isn't that insane as Force Flame or Forgotten are. And with that, this tier list is finished. Probably will bump up big a bit here. I've did it dirty. I've done it dirty. So the only page here after that little tweak that I don't know about is probably Letitia's page, as I really don't know what it does to the enemies. So this is like a tier that I don't know where to put this page, so I wouldn't really jump the gun and put it anywhere. So I just put it in Burned. So this isn't me saying that it is a bad page, but it is me saying that I don't know how this page works for now. And yeah, this has been a very quick episode with no real thought put behind it. And if you watched to this point, I sincerely thank you for watching, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.